Hi, I'm Sheila Martins from Brazil, past president of the World Stroke Organization. We are here in the World Stroke Congress 2025 in Barcelona to interview DPIs of very important trials. IV thrombolysis is the backbone of the treatment of acute ischemic stroke worldwide, and you have here two important trials to discuss and a meta-analysis to discuss about tenecteplase against alteplase. Please introduce yourself first.
My name is Bastian Cheng. I'm a stroke neurologist from Hamburg.
And Kate.
I'm Keith Muir. I'm a stroke neurologist from the University of Glasgow, Scotland.
My name is Yunyun Xiong. I'm a vascular neurologist from Beijing Tiantan Hospital, the capital medical university in China.
Can you explain your study, CATALYST, and tell us a little bit about it?
So CATALYST-TNK is the collaboration between the trialists who've undertaken trials comparing tenecteplase 0.25 milligrams per kilo against alteplase within the 4.5-hour time window. And these randomized trials go back to small trials that were initiated back in 2010 from Clark Haley through Mark Parsons, through our first ATTEST trial, to the large recent trials that include TRACE-2, include the ATTEST-2 trial that I led in the UK, and ACT from Calgary. And we are pooling these data for an individual patient data meta-analysis. These are the preliminary results that were presented yesterday, and that includes, unfortunately, a mixture of individual patient data and a few study level data, because administration being what it is and data protection being increasingly a concern, we have additional processes to go through to get the individual patient data accessed.
Perfect. As introduction, please.
Thank you, Professor Xiong. Maybe you could talk about your trial, which addresses a very difficult and special part of the stroke population that we all care a lot about, basilarity occlusion. And maybe you could also introduce your trial and what the motivation was for the trial, and maybe give us a short overview.
Okay, thank you. So our TRACE-5 trial honestly is following the TRACE-3 story. The TRACE-3 is the large vessel occlusion in the anterior circulation, and then TRACE-5 is the for testing the tenecteplase, whether it's superior to the standard medical care in 0 to 24 hours time window for basilar arterial occlusion. That's the posterior circulation, and the endovascular thrombectomy is allowed in this trial. And this is also a parallel trial with the post-eternal in Australia, and the post-eternal is a global trial, but while the TRACE-5 is a Chinese trial. In our country, just 66 sites. And in this trial, we recruited 452 basilar arterial occlusion patients, and these they were allocated to two groups, and we found that the tenecteplase group had significantly better excellent functional outcome, or returning to baseline at 90 days, than the standard medical treatment group. And the overall endovascular thrombectomy rate in this trial is 49%. So the trial is very important in our field. It supports the use of tenecteplase to 24 hours in basilar arterial occlusion in endovascular thrombectomy capable or endovascular thrombectomy limited settings as well.
And very, very congratulations to this huge success. So many patients. We all know these are difficult to recruit in just 1.5 years, so really congratulations again to this achievement.
Thank you so much.
Great. So, Kate, let's come back again to the meta-analysis. Tell us a little bit about the study, design of the study, and the main outcomes.
So the design is to pull all the data for individual patients, which will allow us to adjust for differences between the populations. Some of the trials focused on large vessel occlusion, like Extend-IA-TNK. Others were very broad, but still recruited somewhat different patient populations. The first motivation was to undertake a non-inferiority analysis and refine the non-inferiority margins. Most of the individual trials looked at non-inferiority with alteplase, but used quite wide non-inferiority boundaries. And whilst individually they achieved that, clearly it's desirable that we look for more rigorous non-inferiority boundaries. So the first step in what was a hierarchical analysis was to look at a non-inferiority boundary with 3%. if that's met, to look for a more rigorous one of 1.3%, and then if that is also met, to look for superiority. So with the total individual patient data set at the present, we have about 4,500 patients, 2,000 in each group and very well balanced, and both of the non-inferiority boundaries were met with a high degree of significance. So that was reassuring and clearly shows a significant rigour to the non-inferiority argument. The superiority based on our individual patient data at present is just not met. It is just non-significant. However, when we add in the data sets that we have not yet received all the individual patient data for, which adds a further 3,000 plus patients to the analysis, using unadjusted analyses, we see a significant benefit in terms of Rankin 0-1 outcomes at 90 days, with about a 2.5% absolute benefit in favour of tenecteplase. In terms of safety, we see no significant difference in safety indices, mortality, symptomatic hemorrhage, or fatal intracerebral hemorrhage. So I think the overall picture is one that is consistent with what we've seen at study level meta-analysis for tenecteplase compared with alteplase, and I think gives us a considerable reassurance about the impact of the treatment.
Perfect. And really less than 2% intracranial symptomatic hemorrhage is very good rate and really reinforce the previous data.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it was around 2% in each group with no significant differences, and the fatal intracerebral hemorrhage, where that's been reported as a separate endpoint within the first 7 days, is even lower at about 1 and a bit %.
And why do you think we should continue and improve this significant benefit of tenecteplase, at least as so good as alteplase? Why we are looking for this?
Well, I think we're trying to reinforce the data because, again, we've had individual trials, but the largest of these has involved only 1,800 patients. When we're trying to establish beyond all doubt that there is non-inferiority, it is better to have an absolutely definitive data set. What we hope to be able to do when we have all of the individual patient data clearly is explore other questions that are highly pertinent with subgroups, particularly subgroups related to large vessel occlusion, minor stroke TIA, a whole series of other questions that arise around about the relative benefits and safety of the two different agents.
Perfect.
And regarding the basilar occlusion, as I understood it correctly, basically over at least 40% of the people in the tenecteplase has really excellent outcomes, so MRS 0 and 1. That is can be surprising that although we know that Chinese populations or Asian population in general might have increased intracranial atherosclerosis, still the outcome was really surprisingly good, at least from my view. Is there? Could you comment on that? What went right, or what helped the patient achieve such a good outcome despite the most catastrophic arterial occlusion there is?
Yeah. So this question is very important. And then when we're comparing with Boucher or attention, honestly, the rate is comparable as well. And so we need to also consider the age and NHSS differences between these trials. So the rate of modified ranking 0 to 1 or return to baseline in the tenecteplase group, the rate was just very consistent with the previous studies. And another thing is then the tenecteplase, they also had high recognition rate in the basilar arterial occlusion. So it's about 15.7% of patients, they had successful reperfusion, which was defined by the ETC 2B to 3 before the initial angiogram. So the rate is honestly is much higher than that we can see in the BRIDGE-TNK trial. And yesterday we also had a trial in Japan, and they also shown there's significantly higher recognition rate in the basilar arterial occlusion. I think this may help the patients to have very good functional outcomes. Yeah,
definitely, and gives, I think, the treatment physician also the hope that not everything is lost in basilar occlusion, and you should also, I mean, I don't have to tell you and you this, but you should really also, do treatment in these patients. And just how do you think this would compare to other populations, more European populations, in which the etiology might maybe not so much be atherosclerosis, but more embolism, for example? What are your views on that, on the transferability of these results?
Yes, so the generalizability, yes. So in the Western Caucasians, the AF is more prevalent. And so it's a previous study shown that actually for the bacillary arterial occlusion, if the patient had AF, they probably have more distal or a distal occlusion. And this may much more benefit from the TNK place. So we can imagine then the post-Atano may have similar results or even better result than us. So that the
really looking
Caucasians
forward
may
to
play
the
better.
to this
Yes.
trial also. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
interesting.
And we are looking for tenecteplase. We approved tenecteplase in several different countries in the world. What's the benefit to change from alteplase to tenecteplase in the regular basis in the use in our routine?
I think it is mainly a practical advantage that because it's a single bolus that you give, rather than this bolus plus infusion regime for alteplase, it facilitates treatment in the setting of patients who are being moved either through different departments in one hospital or between hospitals, which is increasingly the norm for endovascular treatment access. So it simplifies workflow. The experience that's been reported from New Zealand and from elsewhere is that this results in a reduced door-to-needle time. And I think one of the main issues with alteplase has always been the potential for delay between the bolus being administered and the infusion being commenced. We some years ago were surprised at how long that delay was when we thought we were doing very well. In practice, we were not. We had significant delays to the level where you are significantly losing potential circulating concentration of alteplase and then having to restart once the infusion is running. So there may be some compromise of the efficacy of alteplase because of its complex infusion regime, and particularly with transfer of patients between hospitals, the fact that the patient's journey is either delayed because somebody is waiting for an infusion to be completed, or the infusion is truncated because nobody can manage the infusion while transiting. These are both significant downsides to alteplase.
Perfect. And what do you think about tenecteplase for basilar occlusion as Carol presented?
Well, basilar occlusions were included in the big direct head-to-head trials also. We have not yet looked at subgroups to see if there is data that we would have to support the result, but I'd see no reason to expect a different outcome. So these patients were included in all of the major trials also.
Perfect.
Maybe, Keith, I could ask you a technical question. So maybe the viewers would ask, okay, we had the meta-analysis published in Urology, and well, we already saw these forest plots, and so what's the novelty with the analysis you've been doing or you still are doing? Is it patient numbers or is it methodology, or maybe you could give us a short introduction why this is important?
Yeah. Yes, I think when you do a study level meta-analysis, clearly you are simply taking the headline results from all of the individual trials, and that methodology is well established. It's usually fairly robust. However, it does make it more difficult to accommodate the differences in the populations that are being recruited. And whilst that's a strength, it also makes it more challenging to try and draw reliable conclusions, particularly when you're addressing subgroups. So although we were not able to do this completely at this stage, the intention is to have individual patient data, and that means that the adjustment that's possible for age, sex, severity, onset to treatment time will allow us to be much more consistent across all of the trials in defining the treatment effect. It also means we have the capacity to work to more common definitions for large vessel occlusion, for example, for minor stroke, TIA, all of these subgroups that are of particular interest, and take a significant body of information that otherwise can't be easily derived from the individual trials.
And it makes it much more challenging, as you've said yesterday. So when do you think we could expect the final results?
That
because everyone is looking, of course, on the forest plot for the non-inferiority.
Well,
I think we know, okay, but with the superiority, it's still ongoing, isn't it?
It's slightly outside our control, and this was new data protection related legislation that was passed in Canada that's been a particular barrier because that requires a specific ethical approval for data sets and secondary analysis of data sets, even where consent has been given for that use. So because of that new legislation, we anticipated it would take some months, and it has indeed taken some months. I'm told that it's expected soon, but then of course the technical issue of then making sure that the data sets are harmonized and assembled, which has taken a huge amount of work for our statisticians behind the scenes, who have been in receipt of a very, very diverse range of data, some of them going back to 2010, and trying to merge those in a way where we're quite confident that we have all of the same data labels and all of the same definitions in as much as we can.
So we'll keep our eyes open.
I hope soon.
Perfect. Carol, you present chance 3 and now chance 5, and I remember the question why to use TNK for patients that should be treated with thrombectomy, because large vessel occlusion is very important. And you answer, and I agree with you, because you don't have mechanical thrombectomy everywhere. So this is so important to have a drug that you can use if you don't have a mechanical thrombectomy. Do you think this trial change your practice in China? What's your expectation?
Thank you, Sheila. So for TRACE-3, we has already had a new guideline in the extended time window up to 24 hours based on the TRACE-3 and TIMELESS trial. So we updated 2024 the Chinese Stroke Association acute reperfusion therapy guidelines. So in China, if they fulfill the criteria for TRACE-3 trial and the patient do not have access to thrombectomy, they can use the neck pace up to 24 hours. So the guideline has already recommended this. And for TRACE-5, we are on one stage, so we need to get it published and then,
Of course. And for using now, change the guidelines, what is the criteria to treat these patients with TNK up to 24 hours?
Yeah, that's directly based on TRACE-3, so it needs to be anterior circulation, large vessel occlusion, so including the ICA, internal carotid artery, middle cerebral artery, M1 or M2, and majority were proximal M2. And then they need to have mismatch based on this diffuse 3 criteria. That's the infarct call less than 70 mil, mismatch ratio more than or equal to 1.8, and mismatch volume more than or equal to 15 mil. And majority the imaging criteria need to meet, and they could not have more than 1/3 MCA territory infarction. That's the very important exclusion criteria.
Very practical, so thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Great.
So we've heard so much about tenecteplase, and it's coming more and more into clinical routine, of course. I mean, we have switched to tenecteplase. Maybe we could, do you use tenecteplase also in your hospitals, or do you use alteplase? So
we are waiting for this in Brazil. The approval will be probably next month. We are waiting to switch for tenecteplase.
Okay, so there's really, I mean, everyone is changing, it seems. So I was wondering, are there any dark spots left? Are there any fields, extended time window, wake-up stroke, where we don't have a dedicated study like we have for alteplase, and where we more or less copy the evidence we have on alteplase over to tenecteplase? I mean, we do that for just, corners of our treatment groups. Do these spots exist in your opinion, or if they exist, are they clinically relevant? Do we need further trials in this? I mean, difficult to answer, of course, but what are your opinions?
I can give an opinion.
Yeah.
Which is, I think for all practical purposes, it is more appropriate to change policy in favour of universal use of tenecteplase, even for these unlicensed indications in late window or wake-up stroke. The reason for that is largely to avoid confusion, avoid potential dosing errors, and these have been seen in parts of the world where both drugs have been retained. I think there is always an argument for more data being desirable. The more relevant question, I think, is whether it's practical to undertake a trial. Do people have sufficient equipoise that they will randomise all of these patients who are coming in late window time frame or wake up? We've had a wake up trial, TWIST, which stopped somewhat prematurely, and although it was a trend towards tenecteplase, it was not significant. So that does provide reassuring data in terms of safety. And it certainly suggested no likely strong difference between treatments. We have the late time window trials that Carol's presented from China, and again, while while there is an argument to say, well, perhaps this isn't generalizable, I think it becomes increasingly difficult to say that this is something we can dismiss. There's a significant volume of data in favour of these late time window patients also. So I think the gaps are few, in my opinion, and the practicality of running a further trial to address these is certainly questionable. There may be some capacity to do that. There are trials proposed at the present time, and it may be that there is sufficient equipoise that people will randomise, but I'd be concerned that they may take quite a long time to recruit, because in reality very few people will genuinely have equipoise in this.
Yeah, I agree with Keith. In the TRACE-3 trial, honestly, we have a large proportion of patients with wake-up stroke. And in TRACE-5, we also have a proportion of patients wake-up stroke. So if for wake-up stroke within time window, we can use the DWFL mismatch, while in the extended time window, we use the perfusion mismatch. So the question is, if you just want to focus on the wake-up stroke patients, if in the extended time window, so which criteria will you choose? Yeah, if you want to test DWFL mismatch, then maybe it's need to be quantitative. So this one option, and the another one, if you just follow TRACE-3, then no need to do the trial. So, yeah,
or maybe in future you just do plain CT and then look for the plain CT,
That's
just as an innovation.
This is a challenging one, and I think it comes back to how reliable plain CT is in detection of early ischemic change, and I think we all recognise the significant issues with visibility of lesions in non-contrast CT, more so as time passes, but I think non-contrast CT plus or minus CTA may not be adequate for characterization of these patients. So again, it's a question of, are sufficient numbers of people interested in that question specifically to randomize patients or not? And I agree that the scientific question might be valid. I'm not certain that the practical question is one that we can address very readily.
So wonderful, thank you so much. Wonderful work, wonderful studies. We are waiting more for today. So please conclude the interview.
Yeah, thank you also from my side, very interesting. And thank you also for pointing out all the details that we might have missed in the 10-minute talk you gave yesterday. So I think this is very useful for our viewers as well. And there are lots of questions still going on, trials running, and we are all excited to see you all in the next event, either here or in one of the other stroke conferences. Thank you very much, and thank you for your attention, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.